All right. Is there any public comment? If you want to raise your virtual hand, I can call on you. Herb, I see you waving. Herb.
Yeah, I still don't know how to do the darn hand thing. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to comment, folks. So I know you folks are the board's gonna be considering appointing representatives to the merger study committee. I just wanted to say, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for the board, to reach out, and I think it's important that you appoint someone who supports the right of elementary schools in our district to vote on whether or not to close. So keep in mind, I'm not saying, that things have to be kept open, but under the Articles of Association, whether people agree or disagree with, attorneys or whatever, it's seen as we had this right to vote. So and that's in jeopardy, with potential jeopardy in a merger situation, because the merger committee could decide to merge and in the process develop new articles of association that delete the current provisions in our districts in terms of the right of members of member towns to vote. I think this is important for a couple of reasons. So again, really to bring someone on board to the merger committee who doesn't necessarily agree with you. I think this is really important in two respects. First, in terms of developing some community trust in the process. Perceptions are important. Do you want to be perceived as a big tent or a sort of a narrow group? And I guess the other thing would be, I don't know what's going to happen with the merger study committee. No one does. That's going to be up to the committee members. But if they decide to merge and they decide to do so with articles that don't affirm the right of, towns to have a vote on whether to close a town, I think you're going to jeopardize merger efforts. So for both those reasons, and maybe others too, I urge you to appoint someone on the merger study committee who might not be totally in sync with the board or the district, but that will be able to give a different perspective and build some community trust. And if they eventually go with merger, help with the success of the merger effort. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Herb. Paul Forlenza. Oh, you're still muted.
Thank you. I wonder if during this meeting, you could tell us who is on the merger committee, if you've chose those folks, and if so, how they were chosen. I would appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. All right. So our next item is the consent agenda. Please note that there were no minutes attached to the consent agenda. Item approve the minutes of 5/25/21. So we'll scratch that off and bring it up at the next meeting. Rob.
I'd like to pull item D, please, from the consent agenda.
Which item? B?
D, approve merger study committee members.
D. Oh, D. Sorry,
Yes.
the second D. There was a typo in the alphabetizing.
Oh, yeah, I see that now. Sorry.
That's all right. A motion to, so there's a motion to pull the second item D.
I second it.
All right. Okay. Dave, you have your hand up? Is this around pulling this item?
I have a different motion, so we guess we should deal with this one and then please recognize me.
Okay. All right. So, Rob, the reason you pulled it?
Yeah, can you hear me? My internet's been breaking up. I guess big picture, I don't believe that this is a consent agenda item. And I say that because this group of individuals, by statute, has incredible power. And just to speak to some of those, to the extent they could recommend the dissolution of our district, our current forward-thinking articles of agreement, our current board of directors, they could recommend the closure of any and all of our schools. They have the power to rewrite articles of agreement that strips towns of their right to vote on the closure of their town school and or commingled towns and keeping Mount Abe open. They could create a new board of directors, or they're tasked to, that could possibly not have granted representation from each of the towns in this newly possibly formed district. These are, powers that this group has, and we as a board, we don't have necessarily any sway. That they go directly to the state with that. And so I think it's important that we as a board, that we take ownership, we take responsibility, and we acknowledge this power. And that to put this on a consent agenda, a group that unfortunately was selected unilaterally, have not seen the names, the 20 people that put their names in the hat, which I really, really appreciate, or seen their letters to accompany. It just is not a good example. It doesn't sit well with me. It's been referenced that there's historical precedent for this process. Our district has never gone through this process of trying to create a merger study committee to merge with another district. So there's, in my opinion, there's no precedent. I think we're a public body. We represent, our towns, our community. We're publicly funded. We need to go through, at least if anything, a discussion in regards to the acknowledgement of this group of people and their power. And I'm not necessarily here to decide who's on that committee. That's not my intent. But to put this through on a consent agenda, I just completely disagree with. Thank you.
Kristen.
Yeah, there's guardrails. I just want to tell people that we have to approve anything that comes out of that, and then the voters have to approve anything that we send out. So there's a lot of guardrails, and I would think that if any radical proposal came out, that would be stupid, and that would not happen. And that last time this happened, Rob, we had a lot of boards, but the board members on that committee would come back and talk to the other board members and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? It's not just a silo. And so it would be something that we would all be talking about together while that's happening. So yes, a meteor might hit the earth, but hopefully it won't. And we have guardrails so that committee can't just go willy-nilly to the state and impose something on us. There's double vote out of the board, vote of the towns from both districts if it got to that point. And we will be having discussions in board meetings about that and maybe suggestions we have. So it is important. It's a very important committee, and it's not a silo.
Brad?
Well, I have a bit of a mea culpa here. My first board meeting when I joined the board, a couple of months ago, was the meeting, between the Virgins folks and the MAUSD folks. And admittedly, I had, little background information about the 706 mechanism. And my takeaway, from that meeting was a desire on both the MAUSD side and the Virgin side to explore opportunities for, sort of addressing the demographic issues that our communities are facing, together with the challenges of the spending limits. And I'm all for that. I think that the having these kinds of conversations with Virgins is really important. I would also support having the conversations with the other district in our region, but as I understand it, they're not interested in doing that. So after that meeting, and kind of looking back at what was decided, I did undertake to do some due diligence in the statute, and what struck me is that the powers that Rob just outlined are very much there, and I don't necessarily agree that it's not siloed, or at least it's not potentially siloed. And I do not agree that the guardrails that might be put up through collaboration or participation by MAUSD board members with the committee mean that we are not putting ourselves at some jeopardy of having a decision that is made by a group of individuals, however well-meaning they might be, that is adverse to what we as a board for the 5 towns are empowered to do. And in consonance with what some of the remarks I made a couple of weeks ago about the board taking ownership of this process. And so my feeling is that by entrusting a study committee that is sort of outside our power to really ultimately to control, because the statute itself says that the statute itself says that the MAUSD board and the Virgins board have the right to review and comment on any decision that is made by the study committee, but that doesn't mean that we have any kind of power to overrule the decision by the study committee. So it's sort of a guardrail, but it's not very much of a guardrail, at least in my opinion. Furthermore, in looking at the statute itself, the 706 statute, 706 BB pretty much offers a binary choice to the study committee, either to say that a union or some sort of a merger is advised or not. And in my view, again, thinking back to the conversation we had with the Virgins folks, last month, there was much discussion about broadening the sort of the mandate and the charge of the committee to other other opportunities for collaboration, and or consolidation. So I'm just worried that the committee would be faced with either we say yes or we say no, but there's no in between. And I think that is a mistake, that we would be making a mistake by going down that road. I know also that section 706, the sort of the preamble to this mechanism, states unequivocally that there's nothing in the in the chapter, in the article, that prohibits a district, like us, to engage in informal discussions with neighboring districts about consolidation issues or collaboration issues. And I would, again, I would go a bit further than where Rob is at this point, and suggest that that we postpone, or at least hold in abeyance, any establishment of a study committee, pending perhaps appointing a MAUSD committee that could collaborate with a Virgens committee on the issues that we're really concerned about, and that is, how do we address the the demographics and the financial, budgetary issues that are so oppressive right now, and we can do that without sacrificing our ownership of the process, and taking command of it. So those are my that's my think on it at this point.
Kristen? Nope, you're still muted, Kristen.
I put my hand down, but I didn't do that. So I agree that defining communication and input would be really important. And just for some historical perspective, in the past, when we had many boards, there were times when, for instance, an issue was coming up and it was something all the boards had to vote on. And I remember one time I was the chair of the Moncton board at the time, and I went to them with something that was being considered, and then went back to the group that I worked with to say the Moncton board won't support A, B, and C. So it's not going to happen unless you compromise. And that's what we can't do here with the pandemic. We don't see each other in rooms. We can't do the politics of school board right now. So again, I agree, we need to define communication and how do we get input to our members on that committee. But in the past, those members would have come to a meeting and gotten input from us about, hey, we're thinking about this, or hey, we're thinking about that. And we would take a straw poll or whatever to see if that is a direction that the board agreed on. Now, I don't know if we will, I would hope that we would need to do something like that with this study committee happening, and we did it with the previous study committee. So just because there's people on a committee doesn't mean that they're the only ones there and they're not conferring and consulting with the other members of the board. So whether we need to make a formal group that does that, I would prefer that we all did that together. But that's how, when the board wasn't in pandemic mode and people could actually sort of politic about things and talk about it in different ways than we can now. So that's why I'm not concerned about what's going on. I think there are people on there who have different ideas about how to do different things. I don't think that the board is monolithic on anything, as some community members continually say. I think everyone isn't necessarily, wearing all their ideas or thoughts on their sleeves. So I just wish people would be more trusting of the process.
Krista?
Yeah, I was just wondering procedurally if we should just take a straw poll to see if folks are all in agreement that we want to pull this so that we can approve, because I know there are some other things on there that we probably want to just approve, and then we can continue this conversation if that's what we decide to do.
So Krista, what you're suggesting is
kind of what's the phrase? Call the question on the motion to pull this from the agenda.
Okay, wait. I'm a little confused because
I guess we need to vote. We still haven't voted on whether we're pulling this from the agenda.
Okay.
And so I'm just seeing this is, a lot of conversation around something that maybe we need to resolve outside of the consent agenda, but I think we should deal with the consent agenda to be respectful of what's on there.
Okay, now I understand. So the motion to pull this item from the consent agenda, take the vote. All right, so,
There are comments that still want to be made before that vote's taken, because we could lose on that vote, Krista. So I don't know. I would like to make a comment before we vote.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe it's not my role to say this, but if we could keep it focused on whether or not we should keep
Right.
it in the consent agenda, that might be helpful.
Great. I can keep it short.
Sure.
I'm reading, it's 16 VSA 706B. You can get the statute off of Google if you enter it. I think that we need to look at it in more detail to understand in more depth the strength of what this committee can do with or without our board's approval, which I think pretty much it provides for. And I think that I hadn't actually looked at the statute this closely, and I think that is a serious issue that needs to be taken out of the consent agenda. We need to look at that instead of just not knowing what our authority and what our lack of authority is from the merger committee, because they really do have authority over us to submit it to our voters. According to the statute, that's my reading.
okay, any other comments? Okay, so the motion to pull this item from the consent agenda and have it be a discussion item, I'm assuming, is what would happen to it. Is that, all right, all those in?
Oh, it'd be an action item, would it not?
Yes, have to move down to board management and governance as an action item. Brad, is your hand up because you're voting, or a question?
Yeah, I'm just following up on what Sandra said. I mean, if we vote not to remove it from the consent agenda, then we have a situation where it's difficult to discuss the broader question of the scope of the study committee. So I would not want to be in that position. I mean, I think we need to discuss the scope of the study committee, and by voting on the consent agenda to appoint the members of the study committee, basically have that become a fait accompli, would kind of getting the cart before the horse, in my view. If the board chair has the power simply to put the appointment of the members of the study committee on the consent agenda, does she not have the power to remove it and place it on the broader board agenda? I don't know the answer.
Typically, we don't add action items, but I think because it was there, it's not a totally new action item, so we're going to go ahead with moving it to an action item later in board governance, if that's what the vote indicates.
And just to be clear, I originally said straw poll because I'm not trying to truncate conversation at all. I just want to be respectful of what's on the agenda, and so if it's more comfortable to do a straw poll and then it looks like, whoa, we might not actually be able to discuss it, then maybe we should keep talking.
Well, if we vote right now and decide whether to pull it or not, if we have a vote, then that will tell us our next steps, definitely. So I'm going to go down the list. Krista, are you in favor of removing item D from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Rob? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Kevin?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Liz?
Oh, I wasn't muted. Sorry. Yeah, the Yes.
All right, Sarah,
No.
okay. Annie, I'm not seeing Annie. I guess we lost her. All right, so we have 9 in favor of removing it and as from the consent agenda and moving it down to board governance as an action item, and 2 opposed. So the motion carries to remove it from the consent agenda. Okay. So, all right, Dave.
Thank you. So I was going to move to have other things removed from the consent agenda, but for now I'm not going to do that. I do think, however, that as was obvious by the disposal of the first motion, we pile too many things that need discussion into the consent agenda, and then whoosh, they're gone all of a sudden, and we didn't have a chance to talk about them. So in general, I would encourage the chair to place non-controversial items on the consent agenda. Thank you.
All right. All right. So the remaining consent agenda items, which we don't have the minutes for the first A and that D has been pulled, but is there a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda items?
So moved, Andrew.
Andrew?
Second, Krista.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the remaining consent agenda items, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Do we have an opportunity for just any discussion on the consent agenda?
Nope.
No, okay.
Nope. Okay, so the motion passed. All right. Next item is an action item to accept the monitoring report for 2-point financial conditions and activities.
So moved.
So moved,
Andrew.
Krista. Oh, Andrew can move it. I'll second it.
All right, Andrew and Kristen. Okay, any discussion? I do have one worksheet from a board member who sent it, and I will attach that with the response form when I submit it. Any other comments? Rob?
I think it's item 4, number 4 under that. Patrick, I saw you reported non-compliance. So just curious what the follow-up is on that.
I think my internet is unstable now. Sorry, I'm out on vacation in Colorado and the internet's iffy. And the family just got back from something, so I had to relocate. I'll do my best. Let me just pull that item up. Yeah, so this was a situation with tax reports to the state, and we've addressed the situation. We're working to remediate any impact from that. We're feeling pretty optimistic. And that was really, so when I report non-compliance, I have to report a plan to address or to become in compliance. And by way of explanation of the situation and how that was addressed, that was, from my perspective, stating sort of the plan to be in compliance in the future. And I can elaborate, or really I would probably turn it to Floyd to elaborate beyond that, if there's more that you're looking for, Rob.
I missed, Rob, were you looking for more than that? Okay, sorry. All right. All right, any other questions or comments for Patrick? Okay. So based on the information provided, does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? Can I see a thumbs up? Or thumbs down? Okay. Does the data demonstrate the accomplishment of this interpretation? Thumbs up, thumbs down. What's your, all right. All right, so all those in favor of accepting the monitoring report for 2.3 financial conditions activities, please say aye or give me a thumbs up. Okay, I'm seeing any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, all right. Okay. Next was an update on the financial report. Any questions regarding the financial report? Krista?
Yeah, thanks. I don't recall if it was at this meeting or at another meeting, but we talked about being provided with a update on the implications of the budget decisions and positions not being filled on our buildings next year. And I'm not sure where that's going to fit. Could you remind me, Dawn, if that was planned for a future agenda?
I think we talked about that in our planning meeting where we were talking about a way to take some of our updates and condense them more so that we could use the time in the meeting for the longer discussions we needed. And I think that's where we talked about the connection between what budget changes were made and sort of as a superintendent kind of report. I think that's how we talked about it, Patrick. Do you remember it that way as well?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
So I think it's our hope that a lot of these updates will come in a written form so that we can have more time in the meeting for discussion and less time, going over the updates.
Right, I get that. I was just wondering, so then will there be a superintendent report on that question?
Can you repeat the question specifically,
Well,
Krista?
I guess we were talking in the community engagement committee and just trying to get a better handle on impact of our budget decisions or our budget situation for next year on staffing and what that's actually going to look like, and sort of making the connection for the board between what we put before voters and was voted on in the fall to what that's going to look like in our schools next year.
So in terms of positions filled or unfilled since passing the
Correct.
budget? Okay.
Correct.
Would if I added a line in our notes that just kind of showed an up and down, would that address that particular issue, or do you want more depth than that?
Well, I mean, I think, Floyd, in your report, you share which positions were budgeted for and not filled. So we can see the deficit there, but I guess, a better understanding of what that's going to look like on the ground for our classes and class sizes.
More programmatic than facilities.
Exactly.
Financial. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
So Floyd, at this point, your fund balance should be closer to reality as you're hitting the end of the fiscal year, right?
That's correct.
Did the audit have any effect on that at all?
None.
Okay.
Okay, and Sandy?
I wanted to follow up from Krista's comments, only because I was part of that community engagement committee meeting. I think, Floyd, I think you pointed out how the budget is affecting, in essence, concerns about the ends, because we know that class sizes are reducing, we know that staffing is reducing, and I think what will be helpful as a board member is to remain informed by Patrick, the superintendent, on sort of these changes that are happening. So during the community engagement committee meeting, I learned about some staffing changes and people not in classes getting smaller and things moving, and I didn't know any of this. Mostly because, one, I'm not in the particular school anymore, or other ones, and I'm not aware of, all the things that are happening. And I totally get that that's really an administrative issue, but to the extent that it has impact potentially on ends or not, being informed that these sort of major changes that are happening in the schools would just be great, so that I'm hearing it from like in board meetings and being informed instead of hearing it just, from here and there, just because people are, just know because they're more connected to the local schools.
Can I just speak to that quickly? I was at the
Sure.
community engagement meeting. I think Patrick was out of town. I'm not sure who else was there. And to that staffing change, that was a decision made prior to budget build that those positions weren't going to be there. So I'm not sure in that particular instance, that information was brought to community engagement or the community engagement committee, something that had already been discussed, vetted, and voted on by the board. So when you got the information, it was really late because of the avenue and way, the direction and the way it came. We knew when we built that budget that teaching position wasn't going to be there.
Gotcha. So these were discussions. I only started in March. So if these discussions had happened before, I might have just been.
I wanted to make the point that there's a lot of weight put on the emotion of that conversation in that meeting, but it was discussed, vetted, and made with forethought, not just here's an opportunity to cut a position, which is kind of the way it was presented in that community engagement. And I think that was a little unfair. And I think it's important to call that what it was. That the board really did know about that position being cut well before the budget build.
Okay. I mean, there were members on the committee who had been there before, so I wasn't aware that they all were aware of it either, though, Floyd. So that's why I was taking from their lead as well. It seemed like it wasn't, because I am a new member, so I totally get that. So I could totally get where things might get missed in meetings and stuff. And I think that's why we talked about building it in, seeing if that's something that Dawn and Krista thought was appropriate to build in the budget to somehow just keep us updated along the way as maybe a line item, so that we just know that we're informed, and then it becomes a regular thing as it connects. Because to me, really something as it connects to the ends, and it's a nice way of being informed, making sure that we know that as a policy, as things play out, we see how it plays out, as the year goes by. And I think that's why Krista brought it up, because wondering if we could get it into the agenda somehow.
Yeah. Okay, Dave?
Thank you. Floyd, if I may ask, what's the status of bookkeeping vis-a-vis state requirements at this point?
Well, that question's pretty wide, Dave. I guess I'll answer it that we're in compliance of all items that are required. We're timely. I think we're in pretty good shape. I don't think there's anything, our audit would have reflected anything that was off.
I'm sorry, I misphrased my question. So the state has put forth this requirement that everybody use a certain bookkeeping procedure and certain software program. I believe they put that on hold or rescinded it or something, and I just wondered where we are with regard to that.
Perfect. I'll speak to that for a moment. eFinance is the software program that the state has moved forward with. We have internally chosen at this point to continue with iVisions until such point that the state's program allows us to be able to come through an audit without putting the board in jeopardy. To give you one really high level, fast example, the current software would allow our accounts payable person to go in and change the name on a check that was printed afterwards in terms of how we would record that going forward. The opportunity for some serious issues, the checks and balances just aren't there, would create some real audit challenges for us going forward. So the solution going forward until eFinance is an accounting software that doesn't need the 16 Band-Aids and the 5 spreadsheets to be able to reconcile your bank You should be able to do that within your accounting software. We've chosen to go ahead and carry the cost of iVisions, which is clean, allows us to be fully checked and balanced until whatever period the state's program works. It is an additional $24,000 for us to carry that. We have a crosswalk so that we'll be reporting exactly what the state wants to them. So all the data, which is what drove this decision on the state's end, will still be good. We'll be in full compliance with that, but we'll also be bulletproof from an audit standpoint. And more importantly, we'll have systems in place that don't allow for any circumventing any issues, creating issues, and allows us to be good stewards, allows you guys to be good stewards of the community money. I mean, truly, it's your fiduciary responsibility, which is why when we talked about it a few months ago, the decision was pretty clear that it was money well spent.
Thank you, Floyd. I take
Sure.
it from your comments that nothing has changed, even though there was action taken by the legislature, but that has not resulted.
The legislator, sorry, sorry.
That hasn't resulted in any changes for you.
Not yet. I mean, we haven't seen any changes really from the software that would create confidence for us to protect the board and protect our community.
Thank you.
Sandy? Oh, your hand's still up. Okay. Any other questions regarding the financial report? Okay. How about the update on the facilities projects? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right, moving down to board management and governance, an action item to accept the monitoring report for 4.7 governance investment.
So moved, Andrew.
Andrew, okay.
I'll second it.
Sarah Rivero. All right. Any discussion? I do have one worksheet that I'll include with the response page from a board member. Okay, I'm not seeing any comments or questions. Based on the information provided, does the board find that the interpretation is reasonable?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any no's? All right. Yes. Does the data demonstrate the accomplishment of this interpretation? Yes or no, are your choices. Okay. All right. So all those in favor of accepting the monitoring report for 4.7 governance investment, please say aye. Or give me a thumbs.
Aye.
I'm seeing thumbs, thumbs, thumbs. Okay. So the motion carries. All right. The next action item is to accept the 2020 audit. So I need a
So
motion.
moved, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Steve seconds. All right. Any discussion? Okay. Not seeing any. All right. All those in favor of accepting the 2020 audit, please give me a thumbs up or say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Okay, that one passes. Update from the Community Engagement Committee. The subcommittee of the Community Engagement Committee submitted some content for the Addison Independent column. So that was included in the link in the agenda. Any questions or comments? All right, not seeing any. Okay. Next is a legislative update from the VSBA. Dave, do you have anything to share?
Not much. I've been on vacation in Colorado, and then I've undergone surgery, so I've kind of been out of the loop a bit. There is going to be a veto override session, but there's really no new news except possibly to say that the negotiations have started for the new healthcare provisions for school employees across the state, and the state, the Vermont School Boards Association has issued a press release on that, and you can find it on their website. But basically, it's the employer's perspective that they want to contain costs and get adequate health care for employees.
Okay. Any questions for Dave? All right, moving along. Next is an update from Nate Levinson and his company, New K-12 Solutions. So Krista and Patrick and Nate and his two associates, Carla and Zach, met I think it was last week or a week, 2 weeks ago. I don't know, my weeks are blending together. And we talked about some of the questions we still had. We got some answers to those. Nate and his team worked on some communications that we could use, and they were interested in learning about things that we have already communicated. So after that meeting, they shared some stuff with us. We shared some stuff back so that they are up to date on what we've been doing, and they're going to work with us around communication going forward. So we'll all be working together. They did help draw up a timeline, a rough timeline. It's not, specific dates, but it's sort of monthly that Krista's going to bring to the community engagement subcommittee. Is that right where we are, Krista?
Yes. Well, we're looking at, that communication out to the community around the timeline and the work for Nate and his team. But then I think you have something else around communication to the board that Carla also shared.
Oh, because I did send a message out to the authors of all the proposals, introducing them to Nate so that process can begin. I've seen, I think almost everybody has responded back to Nate about that. And now
You know what, and I might need to look at it also. It's been a little bananas for me also in the past week or so, but I think that what we got from Carla is a really good starting point for regular updates to the board, either them coming to us like at our August retreat or communicating through Don and Patrick and I. And she also provided a draft that we could put in our own words to send out to the community, informing them similarly.
Right. I did that one. The communication schedule and plan did slip by me. Things are just so crazy. I had the other document. So I can share this out with the board, and we can attach it in our minutes. I didn't feel at all from Carla and Nate and Zach that this is all concrete. This is, this date. I felt like there was some ebb and flow to things if it was necessary. But I can share that with you. I will do that and then get it into the minutes.
I think that one thing that was really helpful was just hearing from them how they would kind of benchmark the work and communicate with us about that work. And that was a concern that I had raised early on, and others I think too. So I think that's going to be really helpful. And included in the process also is a lot of opportunity for us to provide input around the forming of the community engagement committee or the community input committee.
Right.
So, and that was another concern I had. So.
And so I will get this also to Chris to put in our minutes. Sorry about that. It really, things have just gone from one thing to another, and I think that one slipped out of my radar. So, okay. All right. So that's where that is, and that'll be coming. Next item is a discussion around the lease for central office. And Patrick, you moved again. You have another location.
Trying to find the right spot between background noise and internet connectivity. So maybe I found the sweet spot now. Yeah, so our lease is practically up at central office, and we don't really have a long-term plan yet for where central office would relocate to. So we need to start thinking about renewing a lease for our current location. I think that makes the most sense right now as we try to figure out our long-range planning. And so we need to really think about a term for that lease. Floyd has been in talk with Kevin, who's our landlord now, Kevin Harper. He's very willing and interested in a lease, but just wants us to have a lease and have something in writing. And the expectation would be that he'd hold us to that, which is fair. So, our thinking, as Floyd and I have talked some, and as Floyd talked some with Kevin, Floyd, we've talked about a few things. So jump in at any point. But I believe what we were thinking was probably a 2-year lease with a 1-year option for a third written in there, is what we think buys us enough time to get to a point where there's a decision about long range planning, and also time to actually move locations, right? So a portion of time, say it's 18 months to actually make a decision about what the long range plan is going to be. We would then need several months to actually make the move from central office to a new location. Presumably some sort of upfitting would need to happen, et cetera. So all of those factors combined is what has us thinking about a 2-year with a 1-year option on our terms. So if we opted for that third year, we could exercise that. Presumably we'd have to give 6 months, 8 months notice, maybe a year, something like that to Kevin. But that is something that I think we could work out. Floyd, is that consistent with what your recollection is?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the crux of it. Is we can't move fast enough to be out at the end of our lease. 1, 2, there's a big dollar on any upfit, and that would need some conversation certainly. And then finally, Kevin has treated us really fairly, and it's important that we do the same back to him with a lease that gives him time in a pretty tight commercial market to be able to secure another tenant, and then move forward with whatever that upfit is for him. And I think that you hit all those pieces.
And I think the initial talks, Floyd, are suggesting that Kevin's thinking increases somewhere around consumer price index. So
he just wants to tie it to the CPI. Yeah.
Yeah. So usually hovering somewhere in that upper 1s to about 2%, I think is probably what we'd be looking at.
Dave has his hand.
Thank you. I like it. I think it's conceivable if we decide to act promptly and deliberately, we could get out of there in 2 years. But the option, I think, is critically important in terms of, maybe, government works slowly, and the notion that we would be spirited enough and that we could find contractors to refit. I mean, finding contractors to do anything right at the moment is extraordinarily difficult. So I think it's the appropriate path to take. Thank you.
One additional piece, Dave, that we're considering really strongly is wherever we end up, how can we use the HVAC slice of the COVID money to better position an office space and also do better for those students in whatever building we may be in. And trying to look at that from a holistic standpoint for both offices, which are going to be there during the summer, and a opportunity to have summer programming in whatever space we end up in, because we would then have the ability to cool the space for that programming. So that they were trying to, in addition to figure it out, find the path forward under COVID as well.
I think I agree. My understanding is the COVID relief money is maybe most flexible around HVAC projects, and we do have global warming, and we're going to be asking these kids to be in these school buildings when it's 80, 90 degrees. So I think we ought to act deliberately in that regard. Thank you.
Okay. Andrew.
Yeah, so either Patrick or Floyd, can you remind us what our current costs are annually for the lease on central office?
We're running, our lease is $55,000 per year, and we're on a triple net for roughly another $500 to $600 per month average. So right around 60 grand total.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Sure. Rob.
Yeah, I echo what Dave said. I support it. I know people get up in arms about spending $50,000 or $55,000 on leasing a building, but I also don't know if people would support spending $1.5 million on updating existing infrastructure just to move a central office. I mean, at that rate, that's 20 years of leasing and renting possibly for the cost of updating a building when we have so much flux.
And to that point, Rob, we could buy the current building for far less than that number and have the opportunity to lease space that we're currently not using or program. I can't imagine it would be a difficult conversation to say, let's go buy real estate in this market for us with a declining population. But financially, it's a better move.
Okay. Any other questions around the lease for central office?
Do we have to vote on that today?
Well, I think that's a good question of whether or not that requires a board vote. That feels somewhat gray to me. It's not acquiring property, and yet it's a commitment as well. I'm trying to think. We have an agreement with the town of New Haven for the town hall and that use that I don't think necessitated board action. But this felt really important to have this conversation with the board to get a sense of what direction to go. So if the board's comfortable with it, I think I have the clarity I'm looking for, and we can move this forward.
Looks like you're okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Discussion around board retreat topics is the next one. And Patrick, have you heard back from Sue? I have not seen anything.
No, and I sent another follow-up email recently, so I need to keep poking a little bit to see what kind of support VSBA is going to be able to offer for some of the topics that we're looking for. So I have to keep working on that.
Okay, so we'll keep plugging away at that. Okay. All right. Okay, so that brings us to the action item to approve the merger study committee members that we pulled from the consent agenda. So how would you like to handle this? Would you like to start with the motion, talk through it, or do you want to have the discussion and sort of see where everybody is and and then make the motion. I'm open, if you're open to relaxing the rules a little and navigating it in a way that works for everybody. Brad?
I like the latter suggestion, but I'm open to either.
Brad?
Yeah, I would think we have a discussion first before we move into a motion.
Okay. Dave, what are your thoughts?
I was going to make the motion because I thought that's the way we acted. We have a motion on the table and then we discuss it and then we vote on it. Amend it maybe, and then we vote on it.
Yeah, I'm extending it, or I'm willing to be flexible. If you want to do it another way, I'm willing to approach it a different way. Steve?
Well, I think some of the opinions that were being expressed in the earlier discussion were of such a varied range that it might be difficult to pin it down to a motion right off.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be better to discuss it first.
Okay. So how about for this? Let's go with the discussion piece, and I'll go through the list and from that we have, and we'll just hear from everybody, and then we'll sort of see where everybody is. So I think we've lost Annie. I'm not seeing her anymore. So Sarah LaPearl, do you want to start us?
I apologize. I had to step away briefly. Is this about the merger study?
Yes, about approving the study committee members.
I'm a little bit disheartened at people's assumption that the really quite wide range of people on the study committee are not acting in the best interest of the kids and taxpayers of our communities. I don't think, no matter what happens, there's still a vote. And I just think it's helpful to have really different voices on that committee. And I get the board member things. Like, I really don't need to be on it. I don't have, I'm very interested in being a part of that kind of problem solving. But I just think there's a lot of voices that are on that committee that we have not heard from, and that would maybe act in an effective way on behalf and work really well with a new group of people. And I would imagine that the board members that are on it generally take somewhat of a back seat to the discussion and become like liaisons about and help with the process and relay the challenges. But we have to appoint a merger study committee, and I'm a little confused as to why this is problematic. So I am totally fine with accepting the merger study committee.
All right, thank you. Liz?
So my thoughts are that yes, because that there would still be room for input, right? Like, we'd still be able to do comment and write emails and all of that good stuff, because the way that I understand my role possibly could look like, I mean, I like it. I like how we're talking about handling the student. I like the idea of Bella being not necessarily required to dig deep in all the conversations, but to be a part of the communication and like being a part of some feedback loop between staff and students and the committee as well, and focusing on communicating amongst everyone who's involved. And I would just pick apart two things, because in the earlier conversation I heard discussion about who was on the committee, but we're not discussing the charge to the best of my knowledge at this point. We voted on that with the other board, and when we changed something, they then had to re-vote to change back with us, right? So we wouldn't be to my knowledge, maybe just how we handle the charge, right?
Okay, Andrew?
I guess I don't have really a strong opinion about it, other than I have faith in the folks who will pull this to do the work of the committee, and that there will be feedback from us on the board, and we've got board members on the committee, and there's a process in place, and I have faith that people will be doing the right thing, even if it may be divergent opinions, but I feel okay with it.
Okay, thank you. Steve? Here we go.
So I think I understand the concerns that are being raised about the fact that you could be letting a horse out of the stable with no reins on it. And I think if we were going to try to address that, I think Liz is right. I think the way to do that is with the charge, because regardless of what the state statute says about 706, if we're forming the committee, and that us means us and the gens, that the charge can be modified to require them to do things that the statute doesn't. So the charge can be modified to say, we want to be sure you're looking at other options and reporting on other options than merger, if that's what makes more sense. And also that before your recommendation goes to the state, there will be a binding vote by the boards. And I don't know if that's possible to float those balloons to Virgins and see if they would be amenable to modifying the charge to include those topics. And that way people could continue on with the forming of the committees and doing the work that I think people want them to do, and folks could relax about the implications of it.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
I agree with Liz that the charge has been set. We've talked with Virgins about forming this committee. We are basically looking to staff this effort. I was pleasantly surprised with the diversity and the fresh faces that are on this committee. I'm a little concerned that there are people that may be thinking that their point of view is not being adequately presented, or they just want this thing trumped up or railroaded to be their point of view, and that's a little disheartening. I think it is, by forming this study committee, it is a pretty narrow scope. And by statute, the school boards cannot approve or deny the action, but it does go to all the voters in the district, who ultimately have the say before it goes to the state board.
It's not true.
Who said that?
I didn't.
So maybe that stands to be corrected, but that was my understanding. They're going to be acting independently. And I understand that. I think, I think we are sometimes getting too focused on a specific point and not looking at the opportunities here. If it is a binary decision, but nonetheless, there is, if it's consistent with the Act 46 merger, there is a fairly thick report that goes along with that decision that outlines the pros and cons of the recommendation. I think, and then the other thing is we can't afford to perpetually contemplate this thing. We've already got a schedule that's been laid out that's aggressive, that we've debated as to whether it's realistically, once the committee sits down and start looking at their task. And I think it's unfortunate if we start dragging this out to a 2-3 meeting debate as to the where we're gonna go with this thing. So obviously, I was okay with it in the consent agenda, and I'm still okay with going forward with the proposed slate.
Okay. Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. So I'm okay with it. As one of the appointees, I would pledge to be in communication with the board and take advice from the board as a whole. And I approach the whole process open-minded, with recognizing the demographic challenges we have and wanting to do the very best job of educating our most valuable resource in this state, our children.
All right. Rob?
Well, my original motion was just at least have a discussion. So I appreciate that we're having this discussion. And that's why I just didn't think it was appropriate in the consent agenda. I moved not to try to change who's on the committee. I appreciate 20 people putting their names forth. And it's more of a process piece of just, I would love to see who those 20 people are. I'd appreciate to see their letters. I'm very thankful. I'm thankful that the board members who put their name on this committee, I appreciate them and their insight. And I know that this is not going to happen in a silo. It's public, and so we can attend these meetings and offer our insight. But I think when I reflect back on that joint meeting, I just hope that the committee moves forward and really considers the fact that a lot of people did express the idea of something other than maybe just a fully unified district. And that being said, I think I also agree with the email that, and this is sort of separate, but at the same time completely tied to it, that Herb Olson wrote in regards to, we have two trains right now in regards to the Nate Levinson's train and the merger study committee train. And in a worst case scenario, they're on the same set of tracks, coming directly at each other. In the sense that we could go through all this work in the fall as our own district, come up with a solution that financially works, that meets the needs of all of our students, and that could look something very different than a unified district between our district and Addison Northwest. So that's just my one concern, is that I'm not saying that will happen, but it could. And the other point is, like, I agree with Brad, like we need to sort of take ownership. And I think, not doing our due diligence just to even see the list of people who put their names in the hat as a board. I would just, that's why I was hoping we could see that. But I appreciate the discussion, and I know that people have their hearts and their heads in the right place. I'm not trying to skew the committee to think like myself. Or other folks in different communities. I just think that we need to take ownership and say, all right, this is the process we're going through. And I'll be honest, I didn't quite realize the power that a 706 merger committee had. I would have voted differently, in all honesty, if I would have known, so that's just where I'm at. So I appreciate everyone's opinion. Thank you.
Okay, Kristen?
With an N? Okay, not
Yes.
an A. Sorry, my ear. So I think that if this integrity and if this process and all the people in it have integrity, that I have hope that people are gonna think out of the box, and whether we end up doing a complete merger or we end up having classes at each high school that are taught by one teacher at Virgins, and there's 20 kids in each schools taking part in the class. Who knows? That's why we need information. We need to think out of the box. We need to be hopeful. We need to, talk to people that know about these things. How can we make our high school top notch? And so that's why we just need to do the process. If there's anyone on there that doesn't have integrity, what do we do? Just listen. Let's ask really important questions. I'm glad that Dave said he will communicate, but I just sense just a lot of distrust. And again, I wanted to mention something I mentioned before. The board before, it was about negotiation and compromise and thinking outside of the box and but with the kids at the center. So that's, it's weird because this board has had to be in the pandemic mode for so long, but integrity, hope, and let's do it for the kids. Let's start the committee. I'm okay with it. And I appreciate Dave's sentiment, and I hope that the other people on that committee would have the same intent. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy?
Thank you. It's my own fault that I inadvertently, missed this meeting when the merger vote was made. I just had the wrong date. So, I regret that. It was early in my tenure. The other is I'm not sure I would have known what 706B said. It's funny, I looked at other sections, but not B. So what Steve said about, it may be too late, clearly, because we've already voted as a group. And I don't think I'm making a proposal that we change the mission or the charge that's been given to the merger committee, or I don't even know to what extent we would have that authority. I should have realized this months ago when I was, getting input from community that it is a strange sort of melding of our process. Can anyone inform me, what was the budget we approved for the merger committee?
I believe it was 25,000.
Right. So we have a merger committee that has an enormous charge. When Act 46, when they put that committee forward, I'm guessing it was under the same statute. What they did to decide to bring MAUSD together, I imagine they had a lot of resources available to them. We have just passed in our past meeting to approve close to $100,000, I think, right, for Nate Levinson to work with us and to put a great deal of time and effort into the proposals that have been made just for MAUSD. And now we have a merger committee that has a budget of 25 that literally could make a proposal that goes to the voters that doesn't, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but it is sort of strange that we have these possibilities. I agree that I have a lot of faith with my community members, the board members. I know a lot of them that are listed, and so I have a lot of faith in their ability, but it is interesting that we are investing so much here at MAUSD to not have any say if they say, our suggestion is to close your high school and we're going to put it to all your voters. I'm just putting out the extreme, right? And we're going to be like, what are you talking about? We're like working on potentially something else or different. So I'm not saying that they're going to do that. I think there'll be input, but this statute gives them tremendous authority, more than I even realized until I've now read it like 3-4 times over. So it's just something to keep in mind as we go along. And if our worst fears start coming forward as we start things developing, maybe then as a board, we have to say, is there something we need to do? If things seem to be going and they're listening to what the process is happening, that we're spending so much time and effort on with Nate Levinson, which is a lot, right? And if we're not being listened to while we're doing that process, we might, as a board, want to take notice and decide, well, what's going on with this process? Because it is going off the rails. So at this stage, I'm hoping if we see things are going off the rails, we can act, and that we don't wait too long before we really start expending so much time and effort and to have it being crossroads. So my hope is that doesn't happen. And I'm just hoping we'll just be keeping our eyes open.
Brad, did I skip you? I think I might have skipped past you. Did you have a chance, Brad?
You're talking to me, Diane?
Yes, right.
Yeah, I haven't talked about. I think I want to make sure. I'm a little concerned that some of the my colleagues here may have misinterpreted some of my earlier comments. I'm fully supportive of the study committee I think that the makeup is tremendous. I think that I have absolutely no sense that they lack in integrity. All I'm suggesting is that perhaps, the plain language of the 706 statute says that a district may engage in these kinds of discussions informally without the structure that 706 BB gives us. The problem is and I agree with what Kristen said. I mean, we want to be able to think outside the box for the betterment of our education, of the education of our kids. However, 706 BB, as Kevin said, it's binary. They either approve a merger or they don't. And so how do you get to sort of think outside the box when you are so constricted? So my sense is I don't see what I'm suggesting in my remarks is not radical at all. It's basically more liberating and allows us, as I've said a couple of times, to take some ownership. We can have a committee, the committee as proposed, by Dawn. I think I would support that. I support the process, the suggested timelines. Everything would stay the same. But I would suggest that we strip away the constrictions of the 706 statute, because I think that limits us. And again, I think we're not, in my view, I think that we are not taking ownership of the process in the way we should be. I'm all for getting diverse voices and getting and not certainly having this thing sort of led exclusively by board members and having a range of opinions. But again, I just think that the statute puts us in a box, and it's a very and I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm kind of a conservative guy. It could happen, and I want to take steps to make sure that what we do is in the best interest of us as a committee, and certainly by extension the kids in the schools. So again, my proposal would be to do everything as we're doing it, but strip away the 706 constricts.
Okay. And then I'm just going to I see your hand, Steve, but I'm going to let Krista go because she's the last one who gets to share her thoughts.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know what my thoughts are. In the distance, I see a group of my kids and some other kids, and I'm thinking, I just hope we figure something out for them that is going to work for everyone. First off, I support the configuration of the committee. I think it is good for us to talk about how those decisions are made in the future so that we don't have any issues of trust. But I do believe that the makeup makes sense, and I'm comfortable with that. And I like that. I think what I understood was that there were 4 board members and 4 community members. It seems like a really balanced group, and I think it's really important for us to hear from a diversity of people. I think it's also our huge responsibility as a board to ensure that we, have the pulse of our community. I have no doubt that we will hear from folks about how they're feeling, and that we can be clear with the board member representatives of that committee about what we're hearing. I think that's really important. I want us to be able to move forward because I think that we need to get the answers to these questions to better understand what our options really all are. And I don't see a conflict with Nate's work, because I think that putting together what we can glean from the proposals after his team helps us to better understand them in an apples to apples way, and then looking at recommendation from this committee will hopefully present us with the whole picture. But I guess the one thing I'm a little bit unsure about is just the idea that could we have done this in a more informal way? And I think this is not a unique question to our board. I know that some folks from the Virgin's board asked that question as well when we were beginning these conversations. And to be honest, when we start talking about statute, I glaze over. I'm not an attorney. I'm a community engagement person. So I just sort of hope and am an optimist and think that we'll do what we need to do, get the input we need, and it will all work out in the end. But, I am wondering about why it has to be so formal, and if there's something that can be addressed without those potentially concerning clauses that allow for authority we might not want this group to have, or what we could ensure that our board member representatives advocate for us to bring to the merger committee to put those more clear guardrails in place. So those are just my random thoughts.
Okay, thank you. So Steve?
So I also have really no issue with the committee. It's really just the process. I know in the discussion with Virgins, it was brought up as to how flexible we could be about our solution thinking. And as I recall, really the only argument that was made in favor of 706 was that we wouldn't have to come back and reauthorize them if they found that that was the route they wanted to explore. So I'm not really sure that even Virgins is all that sold on it. I'm wondering if it might be possible to just throw out a trial balloon and find out what's going on the other side of the Route 7 and, see if they'd be amenable to just softening the language and giving it more bandwidth and having a checkpoint in place in the charge. That's really my only suggestion. And if the rest of the board really wants to continue on with the committee and the charge as it stands, I'm supportive. It's just, I think that's the only option we would be able to throw out there at this stage of the game. I'm also not sure, is there some idea of when the board, when this committee would start their work? Is this going to be an August or September start for these folks?
So the Virgins committee, the Virgins board has already appointed their people. So they're just waiting for us to appoint, and then that group has to get together and start planning.
Right. So this would really kind of hold things up if we were to try to get because obviously no board is going to be able to act over the summer until August or September if we're going to change the charge.
Right.
And this is our last meeting until the retreat, correct?
Correct.
So that means really that's the only suggestion that I have, and other than that, I'm supportive of whatever the board feels is the best way to go.
Okay, Kristen Blanchett.
So I would imagine that, the thing I'm most excited about this committee is getting information about how to do things differently. And if we have all that information and the groups decide, no, we're not going to merge, we can still use all that information to try to create plan C or whatever you want to call it. So I just am really interested to get a lot of that information, like I said, and just maybe the answer would be no to a merger, but hey, here's some other awesome things we can try.
Okay, any other comments? Krista.
I'm just wondering if we could even ask at their very first meeting for this group to consider a requirement or something that requires their recommendation. I think Steve might have mentioned this earlier, recommendation to be approved by the boards before it goes to the town. Again, I'll just say that I can't imagine if we're not psyched about it as a board and then it goes to the town, I really have a hard time imagining it going forward anyway. But I think that part of the process makes a lot of sense to me, that it would come through us first.
And I hear that. I'm not sure we can strip away statutorily granted authority of the committee.
Someone's unmuted.
Liz, I think your mic's open. Okay. Brad and then Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, I hear everybody. I mean, I basically agree with everybody. I just don't see what the downside is of stripping away the 706 language. We can accomplish all the same things. The only hiccup is that only problem is that we put a little bit of a hiccup in the, as Steve mentioned, in the conversations with Virgins. But I'd be all for getting this committee up and running sooner rather than later, and getting the information that we want. But not having the constraints that are imposed by the legislation. I just don't see what the downside is. And so I would, if the time comes, I would just make a motion that we, that we sort of put the authorization of the 706 study at least on hold for now, and engage in the same process that we've been contemplated, but again, without the 706 constraints.
And then Kristen, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. Kevin.
I am concerned that this gets dragged out to the point where we spend another month, 2, 3 debating on the finer points of if we're going to remain underneath the existing charter or change it. I sort of mentioned this before, and I think it's a very important thing to think about is, at the end of the day, this committee is going to have to come up with a very detailed analysis, if you will, supporting their recommendation one way or the other. And we'll have, I would anticipate, or I would hope to see, some in-depth discussions and rationale for the decision, irregardless if it's under the constraints of the statute that we've already approved, or if we lessen that language. And then I guess the other thing, somebody had mentioned that particular committee could change their structure or their charge, if you will, but I believe that would have to go back to both boards to affect that, and it wouldn't be within the responsibility of that particular committee to change that.
Also worth just thinking about in terms of relationships with Edison Northwest, because this would be sensitive in terms of process. They appointed a committee upon the affirmative action of both their board and this board agreeing to form a 706B study committee. So there have been a series of official actions taken that prompted additional actions that starts to get complicated to unravel when it's multiple boards, and tricky spot for their board to go back out to the community and say, hey, so that committee that we said we were forming, we're actually not forming now. And the process of undoing that. So I don't think anything's impossible to undo, but important just to be aware of those complications as well.
Okay. Through the course of hearing from everybody, I realized, this is going to sound silly the way I'm going to say it, I realized we're not all in person, because if we were in person, I would have brought a copy of the recommendation and passed it out to everybody, so everybody would have had it. So I realized that our public doesn't have that paper copy. So I will include it in the minutes, but I'm wondering if it's okay with everybody if I just take a few minutes and read through the recommendation, the names of the recommendations, so that everybody can hear them, because we've been alluding to them, but everybody doesn't have that piece of paper. Normally that's what would happen under separate cover. I'd bring a piece of paper and everybody'd have a copy, but we're not in person. So the following people are the people I recommended to the board to fill this committee. Troy Parody. Troy is an active community member, parent, taxpayer, and educator who lives in Bristol. Troy has broad connections with many members of our community, and I believe Troy will be able to support critical discussion and analysis and give careful consideration to this committee's work. Ed McGuire. Ed is a community member of New Haven, a parent and grandparent. Ed's experiences are woven with work with teens and beyond. Ed is a former educator board member. He serves on the Addison County Young Life Board and Addison County Teens. While employed in the district, Ed worked on the development of the personalized learning program at Mount Abraham. Ed's experience is rich with analytical experience. He was a retired engineer and leadership and teamwork. Mary Kate Kelly. Mary Kate is a former board member and Vermont School Board Association regional representative. She is currently a coach for the Mount Abe Virgins High School lacrosse team and has previous experience as an organizer of the youth lacrosse program. Mary Kate is a current member of the Moncton Select Board, and as a member of the LGBT community, she is strongly committed to equity. I believe Mary Kate has the ability to look at a problem in a fresh way and a willingness to consider all options. Dustin Corrigan. Dustin is a former Mount Abe graduate and currently teaches high school PE. He is a varsity soccer coach and middle school baseball coach and a Bristol community member. Dustin is open to problem solving and finding solutions to better serve our students and communities. Stephanie Rossier is a parent, Lincoln community member, high school science teacher, and proficiency-based learning coach at Mount Abraham and MAUSD. She collaborates with district educators to provide and improve curriculum and instruction practices. She is passionate about creating educational opportunities that help our students develop a solid connection and prepare them for their broader life. Stephanie is knowledgeable and has the skills to problem solve and work towards finding solutions to tough problems. Board members who expressed an interest and willingness to contribute to this truly important and hard work ahead. They came prepared with knowledge of the district's current challenges and a willingness to work together and investigate a sustainable plan for the future of MAUSD. And there were 5 board members, and I'll get to the 5th in a minute. So the 4 were Dave Sharp, Sarah LaPearl, Kevin Hansen, and Brad Johnson. When we were talking, the board expressed an interest in putting a student representative to the study committee. After considering the fact that the student reps serving on the boards do not have the ability to vote, and that our neighboring district did not appoint a student, I am making this recommendation. I recommend that we designate Bella Courier as our student liaison. Bella would serve as a link between the student body and the study committee. She wouldn't actually sit on the committee. Bella would inform the students about the ongoing work of the study committee and organize, gather, and share student feedback and input with the study committee. And I recommend that Liz Sayer partner with Bella in this work, and if possible, some of the other teachers that were interested that were not chosen would be able to help to support this work. And I'm happy to share that list with them. On a final note, I was really grateful to have the 20 plus people interested in and willing to serve on this committee. So that was the recommendation that I presented to the board as per our discussion at that joint meeting. And I think we didn't have everyone in attendance at that meeting, so everyone might not be aware of the discussion at that meeting. And the discussion was that the chair would recommend and the full board would approve it in that fashion. So I took the direction from what the board said at that meeting. So knowing all that, have you now formed a motion that you wish to make? Brad.
Yeah, I would propose the following motion, that we accept the recommendation of the board chair for the committee and that it move, expeditiously forward, but that we pursue our collaboration with Addison Northwest through an informal means rather than through the 706 process.
Rob?
I second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion, comments?
I guess I'm just wondering, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I don't know if anybody else was going to say anything. Are we, through that motion, are we authorizing the board chair to reach out to the Addison Northwest board chair? Are we saying explore the willingness of Addison Northwest to pursue this informally, or are we saying that this is, I guess I'm just wondering about a couple pieces of clarity. And whether they're important to include in this or not.
So Brad, you made the motion. What were you thinking, Brad?
Yeah, well, my sense is that, you know, I sort of get what Patrick was saying, that it might create a bit of an awkward situation with Addison Northwest, but my responsibility as a MAUSD board member is to our community, not to Virgins. And so I think that it would be, you know, my intention would be that we would basically tell Virgins that we are very much interested in this process as we have discussed it to date, but that we do not want to, you know, sort of, again, constrict ourselves by the sort of the very narrow focus and of the 706 process.
Kristen Blanchett. Oh, you're muted.
So I'm planning to vote no on this motion. So then what would we do if this doesn't get voted in the affirmative?
So if somebody had another motion, we could try that, or the board would then determine, the board gets to determine the next, another motion, a table, Rob?
Yeah, I support Brad's motion in the sense of keeping as many options as we can for our district on the table. And like Kevin said, and multiple people have said, it's a 706 charter, it's binary. And it's hard to get creative in sort of a binary situation, whether it's either black or white, yes or no. So that's why I support Brad. I think an informal meeting of these two merger committee, or the committees that have been formed, to really explore this and not being constricted to an up or down or left or right or a black or white, seems to give our district the most options moving forward in a landscape that is still changing really, really rapidly in regards to so many factors within our district. So, and at the state level. That's I support removing the 706 power, but maintaining moving forward with a merger committee investigating all the options.
Just a process point, Don. So this board has already voted to form a 706B. So it can undo that, but I think there would need to be a very clear rescinding of the prior action taken. And I think Brad's motion does that, but in perhaps a less clear way, that it's rescinding a decision that was already made by this board.
Hmm.
I have a question.
Okay.
Don, I hate to interrupt. This is Steve.
Yeah.
But I actually have to leave.
Okay.
So I just want everybody to know that I'm in favor of what all you all vote for.
Well,
And have a good night.
See you in person in August.
All right.
Okay. I don't know, Patrick. I would have to have somebody, I don't know what that does to it, because the language is kind of loose to pursue, but I don't know if that undoes it.
Did I go
Liz?
out?
Liz?
Well, for instance, here's the challenge I see is that, say if it rounded out that we did want to do something, and then yeah, we wouldn't have the authority to do it, right? Like we wouldn't have the authority to vote on it, or the board, or we wouldn't actually be able to, because we didn't follow the 706 process, right? So I mean, what if it was, I mean, it's been thrown out many times, the idea of, for instance, combining the superintendents, right? And just the superintendent's office. That's like probably the most basic. I don't, and I'm not saying that's, so I'm not, I like that I'm not on the committee, but then I'm communicating about it. I'm excited about that. And so I just, what if we do this and we find something and we find a way to get some great savings by doing some great thing, but then we don't have the authority to actually follow through on it without another year's process of doing so. And these might be things that we come across that we really need to be able to do in order to make another plan work. So I just wouldn't want to lose. And people signed up assuming that they had some authority on this board too. So I don't know. Sorry.
Okay. Sarah LaPearl?
I feel like we had a really lengthy conversation about this at that joint meeting about the pros and cons of 706B. And that was why we ended up going back and forth, and we made an adaptation to it. And then we ended up with what we had. And so that's my first point. And the second point is that under the consent agenda, it said approve the merger study committee members. So I don't understand how we can make this an action item that has something that was totally not warned and changes the whole story at this point in the game. So to me, I feel like our only option is to say, are we approving these merger study committee members? Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Kristen Blanchett. Yep, you're still muted.
Sorry, this motion gives us less options, like Liz pointed out. I think that we can explore all the options under the current charge and come out with a good solution once we have more information. So again, I think this motion gives us less options down the road.
Okay, and Sandy.
Boy, good comments by everybody. I think this is Brad, I appreciate the motion. I'm thinking, I agree that I think this is an action to approve the committee members. And maybe it's something that we need to add as a separate action to make a recommendation as an MAUSD board to have the committee discuss with their counterparts in Virgins whether they would, because I really think that if everyone says we have no problem with having our boards, approve it before we actually put it to a vote, because we don't want to go for it if the boards don't want it. I could see them wanting, that kind of support before going forward. Then I imagine we could work something out, once again, because we would have to reconsider, I think, the 706. Because we have already given that approval, we would have to figure out a way to, I agree with Patrick, of rescinding it, but I would just like to have the committee think about it and imagine the board members to raise that if we approve them as committee members to, now that we've looked at it more closely, what are the recommendations? And also as a board, we may, as an action item as a board, decide that, again, that we may want to rescind the authority if I think we're capable of doing so as a board. I don't know exactly how that works.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so
Kristen, what does your cat think? The cat weigh in, please.
Not sure. Not sure.
All right. So the motion is on the floor to accept the recommendation of the chair for the committee and pursue collaboration with Addison Northwest School District to find an informal means and not use the 706 structure. So I'm going to go through the list. Krista, are you in favor, opposed, or abstaining?
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused. I want to support your recommendation and I want to support the committee moving forward, but having these conversations. So if I vote yes, is that what's happening? Or are we? I like what Sandy said, and I want to do that.
Okay, but we have
is this
to
the
go
right
on,
motion?
we have to
It
go on
sounds like
Brad's
it, though.
motion.
Sorry.
So Brad's motion is to accept the recommendation of the chair for the committee, but also to pursue collaboration with Addison Northwest to find an informal means to investigate merger options, not the 706B.
So I don't hear that as we're requiring, we're pulling out, or anything like that. I hear that as we're asking that to be brought to the table.
That's the way I hear it. I guess it depends on how each individual hears it.
I would like it clarified more before we vote. This feels a little bit slippery. Can we?
Yeah, and maybe we
more?
can separate out. Can we separate out your recommendation from this other?
Well, I think that's the piece where if we're going to do something else that's outside the agenda item, which was just the merger committee, I don't think we can add an action item at this point in the game.
Right. Okay. So
we can't do this motion? I mean, what?
We can, but I actually think it says that very thing. We're not directing them to do anything that they can't do. We're just asking them to consider other informal routes if they can. That's how I hear it, because it helps that you actually said it out loud. I didn't catch the details of it, but that's my impression from the motion.
So I'm going to go to the author, Brad, again.
Yeah, I think the intent of the motion was to do what Patrick sort of cautioned about, would be to move forward with the committee, but to rescind our decision with respect to the 706 process and pursue an informal collaborative discussion with Addison Northwest. So if that's the motion, then you can, if you want to move forward with the committee, but you're not sure about the 706 part of that, you would oppose my motion. And then there would be a subsequent motion to affirm Dawn's recommendation for the for the membership of the study committee. Is that more?
That's how I envisioned it.
So this is a huge thing to vote on that it wasn't on the agenda. Is this even okay?
Well, the mergers committee makeup was on the agenda.
Right. But that was it. Right. So does the other one have to go to another meeting? Do we have to do it at our next meeting?
Yeah, it should. By all rights, we should warn our community that we are going to be discussing it before we do it.
So will the committee move forward? Or do we have to wait till our next meeting to move forward with what we've already agreed to do?
So if this motion passes, the committee could form, but we've stepped outside of our open meeting law by adding an action item that was not publicly warned. So if you want them to be separate, as Brad said, you'd vote down this motion and then a subsequent motion would be made to approve the merger study committee. And then we would have to put that further discussion as an action or an action item on a future agenda to talk about an informal means and not the 706 structure.
So does that hamstring the committee until that further vote, or would things just move forward?
Well, I think that's
What
the
we
tricky
already
part.
decided to do.
Hearing Brad's restatement was helpful for me. I'm not sure we can approve a merger study committee, which is a 706B merger study committee specifically, and simultaneously in the same motion rescind forming a 706B merger study committee.
Right.
It would be a different committee that would be forming.
Dave?
Thank you. So I think I would like to urge people to vote no on this motion. The concern about the constraints on the committee, I think, are overstated. We changed the language when we passed this. I'm pretty sure you can look back in the minutes, from a unified union to a union merger. So the charge is not necessarily to form a unified school district. I think there was considerable conversation with Addison Northwest that indicated much broader thinking than just yes or no, black and white. Are we going to create a unified one school district for all of northern Addison County, or were we going to be more think more broadly and more creatively about what the best path was forward, not necessarily a unified school district? So that's my take on things, and I'm going to vote no.
Sarah LaPearl.
Yeah, I was going to actually echo a lot of what Dave just said. And I actually don't understand how we can even be voting on this motion. So I don't think we should be voting on it.
Okay, so I'm going to bring you to the vote. So is everybody clear on what they're voting on at this point now? Okay, so Krista.
No.
Okay, opposed. Sandy.
Yes.
Kristen Blanchett.
Oh.
I'm opposed?
No, opposed.
Okay, sorry, you cut out.
Sorry.
Rob.
I'm going to vote yes.
Dave Sharp.
No.
Kevin Hansen.
No.
And Steve's gone. Brad.
Yes.
Andrew.
No.
Liz.
No.
Sarah.
No.
And Annie's gone. 7 are opposed and 3 are in favor, so that motion does not carry. Sandy.
I would like to make a motion to approve the 706 recommended study committee with a recommendation added to consider other informal processes that include whether each school district should be included, informal or formal, included in being permitted to vote before it's taken to an Australian ballot.
Okay, I don't think I caught the end of that. To
Before
approve
it's
merger study committees with a recommendation to consider other formal or informal processes
To allow each of the school districts to vote to approve the proposal if the proposal is to merge before it's taken to a vote to the community. And I think it's Australian ballot is what the is required by the rule.
Sorry, Dawn, when you get that down, can you run it out one more time?
Yep. Okay, so let's see. Sandy is making a motion to approve the merger study committee members with a recommendation to consider other formal or informal processes to allow each school district to vote to approve proposals before going to a community vote.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Dawn.
Okay, so Sandy made that motion.
Can I just say, are those two separate things, Sandy? To look at other processes and to, okay, it's the same, because I don't understand it then. Could you explain it again?
Well, so it's because the statute's a formal process, but it also allows for informal process. And it's going to mean they're going to have to look at the rule to decide what they think they have the authority to do, quite honestly, right? But I want to approve this committee, but I'm giving them a direction and saying that in approving you, I want you to consider these things. I'm not telling them what they're going to decide, but that they need to look at these other options and go from there, is what I'm trying to say. And really the option is, and maybe I should be clear, what I'm talking about is specifically being able to go to each of the school district boards to get their approval before it goes to a vote to the community.
Gotcha. I thought you were talking about looking at other processes had to do with looking at other options, which I think they're doing anyway, right? So I'm sorry, I just thought it was two separate things. Thank you.
No. It
Awesome.
strictly has to do with my concern that we as separate school districts apparently don't have the authority to really give a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on our process before it goes out to the community. I just feel it's really important that we as school board members be part of that process before it goes out. Whether or not we have the authority to do it under current 706 structure, or if it means they have to decide to remove themselves and say, we want to be informal, we're going to go to you guys and say, we'd rather do the informal process under 706, I leave to them. But I just want them to be just officially on notice of, we as a board, if we vote for this, we want you to look at that.
Thank you.
And I think the statute allows for and almost recommends, it falls short of recommending, but the spirit of it almost suggests recommending a non-binding vote of the school boards. Is that what you're speaking to? Or are you thinking something binding?
I'm thinking something binding. I am. I really feel like if the school board members who are the representatives of their communities don't vote to support a study of even though it's one that we approve them to come together, it kind of seems crazy we can't approve, together a report that comes out. That I want them to look at that. I agree with you, Patrick, that 706B as it reads, if you keep it as a 706 committee, may not actually provide for that authority. I don't know, right? I agree just from the plain meaning. And so I just want them to think about it and look at it formally, like in terms of give notice that that's what we would like. Again, it's a recommendation. It's not binding. I'm still saying let's approve them, but we're giving you a charge to consider it.
That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion?
Don, sorry, who was the second on that?
I believe it was Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I would eventually like to just make a motion to approve the merger study committee members, and I plan on doing that if this does not pass.
Okay. All right. Kevin Hansen. Oops. Nope, you're still muted, Kevin.
I can't support this any more than I supported the last one. It's just a nuance of words.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's vote and see where we end up. Okay, so the motion is to approve the merger study committee members with the recommendation to consider other formal and informal processes to allow each school district to vote to approve proposals before going to a community vote. Krista, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Sandy?
Yes.
Kristen Blanchett?
Yes.
Rob Backlund. Sorry.
Yes.
Dave Sharp?
No.
Kevin Hansen?
No.
Steve's gone. Brad? Brad?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Andrew?
No.
Liz?
Yes.
Sarah LaPearl?
No.
Annie's not here. So we have 6 in favor and 4 opposed. So this one passes. So this approves the study committee members as recommended and then includes that recommendation. Okay. All right. I don't think we need another executive session. Is that correct, Patrick? Okay. Is there any other public comment? We have a few people that hung on. So any public comment? Okay.
Yeah, Don.
Sure. Herb, go ahead.
So I'm not really sure who's on the merger study committee or not. My sense is that people are going to be quite concerned about the work of the study committee and could very well change articles in an eventual merger to rescind the current right to vote before school is closed. I had hoped that the board would take this opportunity to try to bring on to a committee people that have a different view. And I'm disappointed that the board chose not to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. Chris, are you able to pull up the evaluation?
You betcha.
Thank you.
What is the level of engagement of all board members, high or low? Aye.
All right, I'm seeing thumbs up.
All right. Was the agenda followed, yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Any comments?
We did pull an item out of the consent agenda.
Sorry.
Rob?
Yeah, I just had I guess a process question in regards to the agenda. When that agenda is warned to the public and there are links, or there could be possible links that say like under separate cover, at what point are those public versus board documents? Because we get stuff under separate cover that I guess if it was put together ahead of time would be a link that a person in the public could click on prior to our meeting. Is there a process piece there, or
so
I guess I'm confused.
So I kind of explained that, like, if I was coming to a meeting and I had a document that was under separate cover, I would bring paper copies and I would share them with everybody. Then that becomes a public document and is included in the minutes. It often happens. People are human. We forget things, or things don't go as smoothly as we thought, and that we got the information ahead of the agenda, that we have to bring something to a meeting. We don't like to do it, but sometimes we do. And when we do, when we have the meeting, then it becomes a part of our minutes and it's documented in that way, just like if we passed out a piece of paper at a meeting. Kristen Blanchett.
So can things be posted online when we get them, or added to the agenda? Are they added to the agenda, or?
The way we do our agenda doesn't allow for the document to be added because it would have to be recreated. There might be another system, because I did hear Virgin's has more of a live system, but I didn't understand it, what they used. They were able to add documents even after the agenda was posted.
It could be more of like a Google Doc, like a live thing.
Yeah, I don't know what system they use, but when we post an agenda, that's the one. In order to rechange it or to add anything, it has to be a different agenda, which then changes. The first one's not any good, and then there's a second one, and
Right, it's more like a PDF sort of thing. So yeah, if we could do that, I mean, if I facilitate that, calling them to see what they use, because you have enough to do, Dawn. So let me know, because I think that's really important, and it would help me to have one thing and not be clicking back to. It's no one's fault. Technology is changing for the better, so let's use it. Awesome.
Yeah, next time I talk to John, I'll ask him what they use. Krista.
Just for a future time, maybe if you could clarify what typically goes in consent and how it's chosen to be put in there, because I think there are reasons for certain things going in there.
Yeah, there is a document that's already been created somewhere, and I can just dig it back up and send it back out to refresh everybody's memory.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure. Okay, back to you, Chris.
All right. Sorry. Got it. Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board? Yes or no? Going with a yes on that one. Any comments? Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process? Yes or no?
Krista, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't know where else to say it, but I just want to appreciate you and this group, Don. I just think that we are working through some really hard stuff, and it is not always easy, but you're open to continually evaluating our process and trying to make changes. You know, we have a peer evaluation, we've developed a board exit interview process, and you don't shy away from asking hard questions and from being flexible. So I just want to appreciate that and this group for, you know, the way we interact and conduct ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Chris?
All right. Other feedback for the chair? Okay. What went well with the meeting?
Robust dialogue.
Got it.
I appreciated everyone being patient and listening to each board member and what they had to say. I thought that was well done.
I know when I was on the negotiation committee, we always said that if no one is completely happy with the outcome, it's a good outcome. And that's what we did today, I think.
Anybody else?
Okay.
All right. Final question. What suggestions do you have for ways to improve future meetings?
Person. Just kidding. Let's go. Looking forward to it, guys.
Anybody else? And that's a wrap.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn at 9:30?
So moved.
So moved.
Kristen Blanchett and Krista Saringo. All those in favor of adjourning at 9:30, please say aye.
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 Thanks, everybody. See you in person in August.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good time, Patrick.